Hi, everybody. So this is Jessica Gandara with my second installment of Women Unscripted. The first time I kind of wung it and had a great interview, and this is kind of what we're going to do now. We're just going to have girl talk with my friend Sasha here, Sasha Jarufe, and we're going to get to know her. I got to know some of her when she was living in the States, and she'll get to where she's at now, but um, I got to meet her in a yoga class. She's a yoga teacher, and her energy, her vibe, everything was totally up my alley. I remember my husband going to her class first, coming home and telling me, "Oh, the teacher I had today, you're gonna mesh with her." I said, "Yeah, why?" And he's like, "You're gonna like her." And he didn't know your name. He didn't know anything. So that's all he told me. And when I went on my own, I picked your class and I got home and I said, there's this teacher, this and that. And I explained who you were. He's like, that's who I was telling you. So it's so funny from the get-go. Just great energy. Loved meeting you. Was with you for a little while. Didn't get to hang out with you too much. But in that short time, I was able to learn a lot from you and some of your story. And I think your story would resonate with a lot of people who are hearing this and are struggling. Um, and those who have never been through anything like this will just kind of be aware of what's going on and how kind of things can transpire. So I'm excited to have you join me. And for starters, I guess I can say now she's in Thailand. So she's 11 hours ahead. She's living in the future. And so even more so, I appreciate you being here with me and making this work with the time and your schedule and all that. So thank you,
Yeah, of
Sasha.
course. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So let's get started. Tell me where you grew up. Tell me where you're from. Let's start from the beginning.
Um, so I grew up in Greenwich, Connecticut, up until I was 13, and then I did high school and college in Virginia. Um, and yeah, I lived a little bit in DC, a little bit in South America, and a little bit in Florida.
Your
And
family is originally from where?
so my mother's from Argentina, but her family is actually Swedish and Hungarian. And then my
Oh,
father's from Chile, but his parents were Palestinian.
very cool. I didn't know that.
Mhm.
Very interesting. So you went to
Yeah.
school in Washington, D.C., Virginia, that area?
So I went to school like Northern Virginia, James Madison University.
Cool. And what brought you down here?
A mix of different reasons. N- n- no, not one of them was like in front of the other, except maybe at the time a little bit the relationship that I was in. But my mother actually lives in Plantation in South Florida, and I was back in Connecticut at that time when I decided to move to Florida, and I had done about 30 years of winter, and I was just like I was over it. I'm not a winter baby, and I definitely thrive in tropical settings. So I was like weather, relationship, parents, and then also career, because I loved my small town in Connecticut. And I mean, when I say small town, it's small, but it's not like small town vibes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's a bubble. Greenwich is a real beautiful bubble. And I wanted to expand as a teacher and grow as a teacher. And I did not want to move to New York City, which was right next door. And I wanted something warm. So I was like, let's try South Florida.
And warm it is here.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know too much about Thailand's weather, but I'm sure it's tropical and warm like here, right?
Yeah, I mean, our humidity sometimes is more than humidity that I felt in Florida.
That's tough to say because it is
Yeah,
humid here.
yeah, but it's pretty humid here sometimes too. Yeah,
Ooh.
yeah,
Well,
it's pretty
before we
rich.
jump into Thailand, because I do want to hear all about Thailand, I'm so fascinated by your posts and your stuff and your videos in Thailand. But before we get there, so you moved down to Florida, and do you immediately jump into yoga teaching? Is that something you've always wanted to do? Is yoga something that was always on the radar for you?
Well, I had been teaching already. I just wanted to expand further. So I've been teaching for 8 years now. So I had been teaching. for 2.5 years before I moved to Florida.
Mm. And when you said you were going to school for teaching, it was to teach yoga? Like, is that the only teaching you had always wanted to do?
You mean
Like for
university?
school? Yeah. Like, did you
Oh
go to
no,
school for teaching anything
no,
in general, like a teacher, school
yeah.
teacher, or
No, 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 no. I went to JMU thinking I was going to be a lawyer. So,
oh wow, that was so. I want to hear about this. How did that change? What happened?
I loved law, but I didn't love it enough to put myself in hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. And I liked the material, but I didn't like it enough to study it till, my eyes popped out of my head. I was just like, all the things I heard about law school and that life, and also like, if you're going to invest all that time, all that work, all that money, it's not something you do for like 3 years and then you're like, okay, I become a yoga teacher now. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, you can. I know people that have. One of my teachers here used to be a lawyer, but I just didn't feel that way. And yeah, I just didn't feel that passion, like as passionate as I would need to be to put myself through that experience. So I actually, after college, I went into, because I'd been doing restaurants in the restaurant industry since I was like late teens. So I went into restaurants. I was living in DC. I was a club promoter for a moment. I was working like as a cocktail waitress. Then I worked for a nonprofit for a little bit. I got out of the industry for a very short while. And then when I moved back to Connecticut, I went back into the industry. So I was in restaurants for 11 years before I left and went to yoga.
Hmm. And what made you go to yoga? What was the calling there?
I had tried, like I dabbled in yoga a little bit in my like earlier years, but never really like clicked majorly for me. Like I was like, it was nice, but it wasn't like something that I was disciplined and doing consistently. Um, and I was like mid 20s, I was like 25 or so, and I was bartending and I was going through like mid 20s bullshit, breakup, this, that, whatever. And I was talking to one of my regulars. And when you're a bartender, you're basically a therapist. So you're talking about life and all these things. And we were just sharing. And I was like, yeah, I really need therapy, but I can't afford it right now. And he was like, have you done yoga? And I was like, yeah, but and he's like, have you done hot yoga? And I was like, no.
That is a whole other monster. Yes.
And the next day I went in the wrong clothes. And I was wearing this sports bra that wasn't even, it was like more like a pajama bra underneath my clothes that I didn't expect anybody to see. I was not feeling good in my body at all. And something happened in that class. I didn't care. I took off my shirt. I was sweating. I was dying. And by the end of it, I was like, what is this? And I call it this, like a light switch. And in that moment, that class, the whether it was the heat or the teacher or the fact that it was like a full room, there was something about the whole experience that the light switch went on. And from then on, it's something that I've probably one of the most consistent things I've done in my life. And
That's pretty
not
amazing.
not just physically, but in all aspects. So
Yeah, because
yeah.
you do a lot of internal work with yoga. It's not just the movement aspect of it. It's a lot of it is internal. So it's
Right.
a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. Regular yoga was okay. It was like, yeah, I've done that. I've dabbled in that. And then it wasn't until I got invited into hot yoga that was the game changer for me too. That was just,
Yeah.
I'm not a yoga teacher, but man, that is one thing. It is like a therapy. It really, really is like a
Yeah.
therapy.
Yeah.
I've loved every minute of hot yoga since I found it. So I
Yeah.
totally agree with you. Um, okay, so you come down here and you start teaching hot yoga
Yeah.
down here, right?
Yeah.
And tell me about any challenges or any struggles because I know I know yoga teachers aren't millionaires. At least I haven't met any that are. They don't do it for the money. They do it for so many other reasons. So tell me about any struggles or challenges you've had since becoming a yoga teacher.
Well, I can say that I do know some that are successful for sure. But yes, it is definitely not a field you go in with the mindset of becoming successful. If you do, you're going in for the wrong reasons. And it's not to say that you won't be successful, you might, but it will come at a cost. And yoga is really all about just helping others and loving others in as many capacities as possible. And so in that sense, when it comes to finances, for sure, it's been a struggle. For many years, I was able to do just yoga and just scrape by and basically live paycheck to paycheck. And I mean, to be honest, not much has changed because I've completely changed my whole world. So, but even in the US, I was basically living paycheck to paycheck. But at the same time, the standard of living in the US with the cost of living is pretty impossible to really be successful as a yoga teacher without some kind of supplemental income. And I was very stubborn. I didn't want to buy into that like stereotype that like you couldn't make yoga your main job. Like I've had so many people still come up to me like and be like, but this isn't all you do, right? Like this is not like a lot of people don't see teaching yoga as a career. They see it as the additional career, as the
Right.
something fun that you do. Like
Like a
so
hobby.
many so many students at Yoga Factory would come up to be like, but you have like a regular job, right? And I was like, this is my regular job. Like it frustrated me so much, but I was like but at the same time, I understand why they say it. So you have to practice a lot of forgiveness in that sense. But during COVID was really the time that I started to try to find something else because I mean I had to. The studios were closed, and you had to make things work. So I started to work as like a private chef on the side, and that kind of continued after COVID. And that was my hobby job, and yoga is my main career. And now yoga is still my main career, but I'm also working remotely for my uncle's company, so that gives me some money in US dollars, not a lot, but something. And
And
yeah,
what
I
type of
mean,
company? Like, what are you doing with your uncle?
he has a like pension fund company, so basically I'm gonna try to the way that I dumb it down for my own head is that basically when you retire you have your 401k, but he works with corporations and companies and to help them like when they retire to retire with more money than just the 401k. So it's accounting and all that kind of stuff. So I just do data entry, nothing
Yeah.
serious, which is fine. I don't need to do anything more.
And the time
Um,
difference works, right? Because it's just plugging in numbers. You don't have to be somewhere at a certain time or anything.
Right. Yeah. So it works with the time difference. It works with the flexibility of my schedule. Um, and yeah, I mean, there's the challenge, of course, now in Thailand to still make ends meet, but it's not as much of a pressure to survive as it is in the US right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Things are crazy expensive over here. It's it's crazy.
Yeah.
Um, Hopefully there'll
There's
be
people,
some break.
but
Yeah, I know. I know. Just being hopeful.
yeah, I hope so too.
So, while you were here, and again, you don't have to go into any details that you don't want to. I know you were struggling with some stuff that you were posting on your page that you went through. Is that something you want to touch on
Yeah,
today?
I'm
You
happy.
know?
Yeah, yeah. Feel free
Okay,
to.
because I know you were so, so strong during that time because you, with all the inner turmoil you were dealing with, you were still coming to class. And I would always marvel at how you were able to leave that at the door and bring in such positive energy despite what was going on inside. Because I know you were hurting because I saw it on your posts and I saw it on your videos, but yet you were able to leave it at the door, walk in and give us this amazing experience and feel so connected to you and make it so positive when everything inside was just crumbling. So tell me about that. Tell me how that all kind of went down.
I would say that it wasn't possible despite um what I was going through. It was more like what I was going through. I used that. I used that. I channeled that pain, that hurt in ways that I could how can I use this to help others? So that's kind of like, and I mean, and not just with that, but with anything that I went through in my 8 years as a teacher. You know, I could be in the car breaking down crying, and I would walk in and I would like use that, you know what I mean? Um but um yeah, I mean, I don't know if you want me to just
Whatever you're
talk
comfortable with,
about
whatever you want to
what's
share.
happened. Yeah, I mean, so in during COVID, I was sexually assaulted, and uh I after a month I reported it, and took about 3 years for it to go to court. So that was last year. And
Was
yeah,
this
it's been
someone you
a
knew?
it was someone that my mother knew. So it was my mother's like bioenergetico, like an energetic doctor that works with like Oriental medicine, that had been her doctor for 2 years. And I had been, it was like COVID. I was going through some like physical aches and pains, like a couple things, I don't remember what it was, a couple things that were just not going away. And she kept telling me to go to him, and I was like, but I can't afford him. And then my mom brought so much business to him, so much business to him. So he was like, well, my wife is pregnant, maybe we can exchange, she can teach my wife yoga. But she was like 8 months pregnant, and I'm not a prenatal yoga teacher. So I was like,
Yeah.
no, I don't feel comfortable. And then he was like, he kept insisting, and then he was like, no, just bring her, and you've brought so many clients to me, it'll be on the house. And then after that, if she wants to continue seeing me, we can figure something out. And so yeah, I went, and it was supposed to be just like acupuncture and that kind of stuff, and it turned into I did not know at the time that it was a tantric massage, but that's what it was. And what's really awful about that is that like these are people in the wellness community that are like spiritual, energetic healers that you're supposed to be able to trust. And unfortunately, just like in everything in this world, there are pretenders or people that use that position to take advantage of others, and also manipulate what tantra is, because tantra is not just about sex. Tantra is actually this whole, it's like where yoga really comes from, like hatha comes from tantra, like it's a whole, I'm not going to get into the history of it, but basically he used like this one little part of it to manipulate, which he's not the only one. There have been other people who have used tantra yoga in this way. um
So a
and
tantric
unfortunately,
massage is what exactly? Something that he
I
does with his hands, like he
yeah,
hands go
I mean,
places that they.
it's a full body massage, but in the training that he went to, it's a training for you to use on your partner, not to use on your patients. And they learn how to massage your partner in ways to control the body, to excite the body, to just, they learn things that like I didn't even know until the till it went to court. And I heard the woman that did the training, they had her come and testify, and she had no information about my case whatsoever. She had no, like she had no details, and she sat there and word for word described exactly what happened to me, and how he was able to, like, because my body froze, I wasn't able to fight him off, like it was a whole experience. And you're in that moment, and you think that when you're in that moment, when someone's going to come at you or someone's going to try to assault you, that like, I always thought I would kick their ass, and there I was frozen on the table. And I felt a lot of guilt, a lot of shame for a long time, and even still now, like there's still a little bit of that, but I just keep reminding myself of what I know factually and logically to kind of help with that, which at the same time allowing myself to feel it, because you don't want to just rationalize it away. You want to also allow yourself to feel it. Um, but I now know that he knew exactly what he was doing, and
So you
yeah, but
reported it, And then what happened?
Reported it. I got him to confess it on a controlled call. I made a phone call where he was being recorded and he didn't know. And I said, basically the call was for me to pretend like, because he kept calling it a treatment and an energetic healing treatment. And I got him to admit that if he saw me again, that he would do that as many times as necessary in order to release the blockages. And I also he also confessed to the detectives when they went to question him, because he's not very smart. So he was like, he handed them the book from the training. It was and then we had to wait until they could officially charge him. And he was once he was arrested, he was out on bail, and he wasn't allowed to work or practice on only women. For some reason, the health department didn't sanction him against men as well, just only women, which doesn't make sense. But at least we got him away, from working in some capacity.
How long was
And
the
then,
process from the time that you reported him to them taking that action?
so I reported him end of May, beginning of June of 2020. And last end of, was it, and beginning of May, I believe, was the first court date.
Of the following year?
No, last year.
Oh, last year. Ugh,
Yeah,
a
it
long time.
took 3 years. Yeah, but the American justice system takes its lovely time. A lot of steps and processes. A lot of it was really challenging. Especially there's a deposition that you do where, like, the way that the justice system is set up for victims is not amazing. The fact, like, now they've changed some things and they're working on changing some other things. Like, the deposition was basically like I'm not the one who committed the crime, but it felt like it. Like, I'm getting questioned by the defense attorneys as if like I'm doing something wrong. The defense attorneys wanted to bring out pictures of my Instagram and be like, why is she doing this? That's not yoga. Like, basically insinuating that I'm promiscuous, that I'm a slut, that I dress, scandalously, like all these things. They try to use any tactic that they can. They ask you the same question over and over again. They push your buttons, but I was able to maintain composure for the deposition, and the court case was like that, but times 1,000. So
How stressful.
yeah, it feels very surreal now, talking about it. I haven't talked about it in too much depth too often since the kind of like ending of that chapter in a way. But yeah, it feels like a movie. It doesn't feel like real life.
So
But
what was the end result? What did the court
he
decide?
was found guilty. And it's basically just my testimony, because there's no evidence.
Yeah.
There's no evidence. It's basically my word against his. But when you have the truth on your side, it makes a difference.
Is his license revoked or like?
Yeah, he's in jail for 8 years and then 7
Wow.
probation. So in
Wow.
Florida, the max that they can give you is 15 total, and it could be like 10 years prison, 5 years probation. I mean, like, 15 is the max,
Yeah.
right? So it could have been a lot less. And I actually tried to settle out of court, because I didn't want to go. I mean, who wants to go to court and have to relive it and have to
Yeah.
like convince people that like you're telling the truth, and
And have your
have to,
character thrown out like that, like thrown at you
yeah.
like if you were some kind of bad, you know,
They had a
promiscuous person.
they last minute, like the last 2 weeks before the trial, they were two male attorneys and I had two female attorneys, and they hired last minute a female attorney to try to, and she was like, as we say in Spanish, una bruja. Like, she was
Mm.
not a girl's girl at all. She was awful. She was meaner to me than the men were. Like, she was horrible. I will never forget that face. But yeah, that was an experience in itself. Um, but
What
yeah,
did you
they
deal what did you do to deal with that stress for all those years and the dealing with the depositions and all these things that were getting thrown at you? How did you cope?
some
Are you still coping? Did you like how where are you at with all this?
I mean, in some ways, my I would say that my coping was a roller coaster. Because when it happened, uh, my grandfather was dying from COVID. So,
Mm.
which is why one of the reasons why I waited to report it is because my family was dealing with him dying and then his death 2 weeks after my assault. Um, and I pretty much, after reporting it, they tell you have to wait until it's gonna go to court. So I kind of put it in the back of my head and I pushed it back there so that I could kind of just get through every day because it was a part of me every day.
Mhm.
Um, and in 2021, a month before the deposition, I got a phone call to let me know about the deposition, to send me the transcription of my report. Like, basically, I have to read over it. And it brought everything that I was hiding in that box in my head to the front. And I wasn't dealing with my shit very well at all. And one night I went out and it was like an out of body experience. I was drinking a lot that night, and I got in my car and I hit I hit a railing, pulled the car over, and I fell asleep. And I got woken up by the cops, and I went to Broward jail,
Oh,
and
no.
I was there, and it was awful. Broward County Jail is awful. It was a terrible, terrible experience, but I truly believe if that hadn't happened, something 1,000 times worse would have happened because I wasn't dealing with my shit.
Yeah.
Um, so that forced me to deal with my shit. And I got actually, at the same time, I was getting a few months of free therapy from the state, but it wasn't enough. They give you like 3 months and they're like, okay, you don't have like severe PTSD, so we're going to let you go because we need the space for people that are really struggling. It totally makes sense. You know what I mean? But that had only been 3 months the year prior to. So when the DUI happened, it also kind of like forces you to be monitored in a way. So it forces you to be disciplined in certain ways. And, I was getting actually tested once a month to make sure that I wasn't on drugs or alcohol,
Did you
which
have to breathe into something every time you drove or anything?
I did later on. So they made a mistake with the processing that they put me through. And so I was like in one program for a year, and then I had to do 6 more months because they made a mistake. And in those 6 months, I had to have a breathalyzer in my car, which also is awful.
Yeah.
But like I said, it was a very humbling experience, very humiliating experience. But at the same time, I really tried to make the best of it. I actually got really close to, I had two different, like, not POs, because I wasn't really on probation, but it was like a program in a way. So I had two people that I got really close to, these two women that really helped me get through my case. I made sure that I was on top of it. I passed every test, like, never once had a transgression that set me back or anything like that, because it's really easy for them to like catch you and for you to get in trouble again. But I was like, no, I made my mistake, but I also didn't want it to keep me from living my life and fulfilling my dreams. Even when I was in Thailand the first time for my 300-hour I was still part of the program, and I had to like check in every day to see if I was getting called in for my drug test. And when I got the call, I had to go here in Thailand to a clinic and spend like $200, whereas in Florida it was $30
Yeah.
for each test. So like I did it because I wanted like I mean I had to get everything approved for me to come to Thailand. Like everything was done like on the outside it was like, oh, she's going to Thailand, but for me it was like a
Right.
really big deal. And
A lot of sacrifice.
a lot of sacrifice, yeah. And so that was like me not really coping with it, and then starting to cope with it, and just living in that, like just living in that kind of awareness. And then in my 300-hour, I mean, and what helped me cope besides like support from loved ones and that program, but also yoga itself helped me. I say this many times, and I will say it until the very end, but yoga has saved my life multiple times. Um, and in my 300-hour, I learned a lot of things
That
that
was, I'm
really
sorry,
helped
just so
me.
the people who don't understand, the 300 hours is for teacher training, right?
Yes. So when you become a yoga teacher, the first training is 200-hour. I like to like say it's like the bachelor's degree, and then 300 hours like your master's degree, but you can keep doing trainings and it just keeps adding on. So right now I'm like a 600-hour trained teacher, but really you can just say 500 to make it easy. Um and in my 300-hour, the the experience itself, the knowledge that we received, the teachers we had, the whole experience in itself was very, I want to not always use the word healing because it implies that something's broken sometimes and needs to be fixed, but life is not all healing. But the experience itself gave me a lot of tools to work through life, to heal, but also to progress, to evolve, to maintain. Especially my philosophy teacher, who has had a huge impact, and he taught me many lessons that helped me prepare for the court case, helped me through my DUI, and even like one meditation that I did right before going to testify. Like the whole thing, it everything happens for a reason, and truly that training um, happened for that.
And is that why you feel so connected to Thailand? Like you had such growth there and like, because I know
Um,
you came back from that and you did not stop talking about Thailand, how amazing it was, how much you learned there. And I didn't even know that you had gone there during everything that like the DUI. I didn't know anybody about any of that. I thought it was strictly the yoga stuff. So you were really dealing with some heavy stuff while you were far.
yeah, I mean the the DUI stuff, um, I'll talk about it openly as much as I can, but at the time there's a lot of stigma around it, and I was definitely afraid of what my students and places of work would think if I really shared about that as open, which is interesting. Like I shared very openly about the sexual assault on my social media, but I've been really hesitant to talk about. I've actually been arrested 3 times in my life. So for me, I was super embarrassed about this last time, and I didn't really know how to share that. And I would like to share it one day on my social media in some kind of capacity, but I'm still figuring out like how,
Yeah.
and how do I want to, because I think it's very important, because it's the society, the culture around alcohol, especially, I mean, everywhere, every country has its issues with it. But in the US, the DUI situation is a real pandemic. So I think it'll be useful for me when I once I figure out how, and you know, what modality I want to share, and then I will. But yeah, at the time, it was like hard for me to talk about that publicly. So I kept that pretty private. But I don't know if that's why Thailand was so amazing and why it left such an imprint and why I wanted to come back so badly. I think it was, and it wasn't just because of what I was going through and how it connected in that way, but in general the experience was huge, especially as a teacher. The summer before, I was burning out as a teacher, and hot yoga burning out. But I really was. I was teaching a lot. I was working as, like, I mean, just nonstop, and I could feel myself getting like run down, and I was like, either I realize that maybe this is not my path anymore, maybe I'm not supposed to be a yoga teacher anymore, or level up. And my intuition was telling me to level up, and that's what the 300-hour was. So it was a lot more knowledge as a teacher in all like layers, not just asana, physical postures, but philosophy, meditation, breath work, history, making magic, creating magical experiences. Like, we literally had modules called Making Magic. And like, how do you create these experiences for your students and also not completely deplete yourself? You
Right.
know, how do you keep making energy? How does it become like a cycle that keeps giving? You know, like, I know teachers that burn out to the point of just complete exhaustion, and that's because they're not there. And I've been there, where you're not finding that kind of constant cycle where it's like giving, receiving, giving, receiving, giving, receiving. There's so many teachers that miss out on that, and then they end up give, 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 and then they're
Right.
like, you know. And but I didn't really always feel that way as a teacher after my 300 hours, so it really made a significant difference. And there's just so much knowledge out there. It's You'll never, like with yoga, you'll never stop learning, and that's the amazing thing. It's not like you've done 500 hours and you know everything now. Like, absolutely not. I'm just scratching the surface.
It's so crazy because I wouldn't think that there's so much into it. There's so to me in my simple mind, it would be okay, the breath work and the positions and and like that's it. There's not much deeper than that, but apparently there is. It's like a whole world.
Yeah, well, with yoga, we have what we call the 8 limbs of yoga, and these are different ways to practice and experience yoga. And the asanas, the postures, are just one of the 8 limbs. And then breath work, meditation are another one. Like, it's really amazing how much we don't know. And I wouldn't say it's in your simple mind, it's just what you've experienced so far, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And if the curiosity is there, uh there's no pressure to like learn it today or tomorrow. Like, with yoga, it's continuous learning, like, however fast or slow it happens, and if you decide to go into that space, but there's never any pressure around it, you know.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being so open and vulnerable about your past and about everything that you went through. I know for a fact that there's people who have gone through similar situations where people of power have taken advantage, of them, maybe sexually, maybe physically, mentally. There's always that abuse of power. Someone you trust that you feel like, okay, this person's going to help me, and they end up doing so much damage. So thank you for bringing that to light because some people may be ashamed, right? They may be embarrassed. They may, like you said, you
Yeah,
still get a little bit of guilt, but that's so, I mean, that's not that's their issue. That's not your issue. You
yeah,
went with an open heart, open mind to help fix yourself, and then you got dealt this horrible deck of cards. But
yeah.
I think,
Unfortunately, it's usually someone you know. Like,
yeah,
9 times out of 10, it's usually
yeah,
someone you know. um and there's not only shame and guilt around the incident, or the fact that you didn't fight back or didn't fight back hard enough. But there's also the discouragement of
Right.
having to go through the system
Right.
and go through all the hoops. Uh, I know that I got exceptionally blessed from the moment I reported it to the very last second of the sentencing, because every person that I came in contact with were probably some of the best in that field. And you hear, I knew someone else that had an even worse story than mine, that got raped in Fort Lauderdale, and they dropped her case. I mean, just like awful, awful, awful. And yet here I am with just my testimony. Like, she had way more evidence, way more just, I mean, even my lawyers, prosecutors prepared me. They're like, I have literally had video evidence, and the jury found him not guilty.
Wow.
And um so there were a lot of moments where, like, I felt like giving up for sure. I was saying this earlier, but I got lost and I don't know what I was talking about. But I actually offered him a plea deal because I didn't want to go to court. And in the plea deal, we were being very nice. We were only asking for a year of prison time.
Mhm.
And they kept, and the rest would be probation, and he would have to go to therapy, and he would have to do this, and he'd be a sex offender for life. And so there were a bunch of extras. But for what happened to me, and in retrospect, it's good that we keep them off the streets, because they eventually escalate and get worse. But knowing how overcrowded our prisons are with a lot of people with lesser charges, I was like, listen, I'm happy with a year as long as he becomes a sex offender and he has to do all of these things afterwards. But he did not want to do prison time, and he did not want to be a sex offender because he has two young sons. And I was like, well, I'm not taking less than that, and you will be a sex offender. And they also wanted to decrease the charges. They wanted to take it from sexual assault to aggravated assault. So they wanted to completely take out what he had done to me. And I was like, no, then we're going to fight. But the irony is that if he had accepted the plea deal and let his ego out the door, he would have been with his children by now. But because he wanted to have the show, the pomp and circumstance of a court case, here we are. And it's very frustrating because at the sentencing he had like 20 people speaking in his favor of what a pillar of the community and how amazing he is and how much he helps them. And there were people that testified and said, we know what he did to her, and I would still send my daughter. I was like, so you know what he did, and you would still send, like, they knew the
Well,
details. And
and imagine how many people before you he's done things to that have not spoken up, that feel the shame, that feel the guilt, and have just stayed quiet because they just can't imagine like going through everything that you've gone through. They may not feel strong enough to do all the
yeah,
things that you've done.
there was one girl who he had tried, but she stopped him, and she didn't want to come forward as a victim. She
Yeah.
didn't even get assaulted, and she didn't want to come forward, even though it would have helped my case. She didn't want to come forward.
Yeah.
So I mean, you have people like that for sure, and I understand. I mean, I understand. I'm not upset with her. I still won. but but um but I understand the resistance. I understand the hesitation, especially from people like, I don't know if she was not born here or if she was born in Colombia. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
there's so many reasons why people won't come forward.
You know,
And
I always think about like the backlash. So let's say he has a couple years and then he gets probation and he comes out. Do you fear at
he
any
can't come
moment?
out. He can't come out early. He has to do the 8
Mm,
years, and then he has 7 years probation.
wow. He could have just done the one.
He could have just
Now he's
done the
going to
one.
come out the 8, but still be a sex offender. Like
Still be a sex.
what a mess.
Yeah.
But okay, so even with that, let's say after 8 years he comes out, do you fear in any way? Like do you have it in the back of your head that he might come and I don't know, do something?
Um, I don't fear him. I mean, I looked him dead in the eyes in that courtroom, and I don't fear him. I can take him. um, but it's not really fear. It's more a sadness that I have for his kids because I'm sure they're going to be told a variation of the story. Of course, they can find out for themselves, and who knows, maybe they'll see their father for who he truly is. We never know what's going to happen down the line, but from what I saw already at sentencing, from the way that his wife and mother and everybody's like manipulated, and I I'm more I I feel a lot of guilt about his kids not having a father, and for the stress that the mother's now going to be under as a single mother, and as a single, she's been the single provider since he got his license revoked, but at least he could stay at home and watch the kids.
Right.
So now, things are going to be very difficult for them. And I know that's not my fault, but
Right.
it still doesn't make it feel any better knowing that it's not my fault. And yeah, I worry more about his kids than anything else. I'm not afraid of them, but I worry for them. And but I don't plan on moving back to the US, so we should be okay.
So that's interesting. I wanted to ask you. So, okay. So before we jump into that, what brought you back to Thailand? So you finished this court case. I remember the day that the decision was made. You posted it, super excited, and then shortly thereafter, you told us that you were leaving. So what led up to that?
So I had to, let me just turn down my AC. I'm sorry. I'm getting a little cold. Um, so because people were like, oh, you go to Thailand the first time, they're like, you're not coming back. And the only reason why I came back is legally, I literally had to. Like, as you say in Miami, literally, I had to. And I had to tie up all those loose ends when it came to my DUI and the sexual assault case. Um, so one, as soon as the sexual assault case was done, that was one thing already. And then the DUI case, everything was like all the terms that I had to meet in order to get it expunged off my record. That well it was decreased to reckless driving. But that all came to an end in first week of January. So a little bit, I would say like December-ish is when I started to like really feel like myself making the plans. I started doing research, started to look for jobs, started to just apply. The the school where I did my 300-hour Vikasa, they have a karma yogi program. So karma yoga is when you provide just whatever it is that you can do as a human being in exchange for, whether it's some yoga studios, you can be a karma yogi, you can help like clean up or work at the front desk and you get free yoga, right? So like here, the karma yogi program is you come and assist one of their trainings, whether it's 200 or 300 hour, and they give you accommodation and food in exchange.
Hmm.
So I had applied for one that was like earlier this year and I didn't get in. Then I applied for a program they were having called Yoga Camp, and they were training people to basically start opening up other locations in other cities and countries. And they had 8 spots, and I also did not get selected. So I was feeling like maybe I'm just chasing a high. You know what I mean? Like maybe I'm just chasing this Thailand high, and maybe I'm trying to recreate something that maybe was supposed to be just that. So maybe I'm not, even though I loved it and I intuitively felt the call to come back, I was like, maybe I'm not supposed to go back. So I started to just apply all over the world. I applied in Morocco, I applied in, I don't even know. So long, I was earlier this year, is a bit of a blur, but I applied at a bunch of places. And in 1 week, I had 3 interviews at 2 places in Thailand and 1 in Morocco. And and this was not one of them. Vicasa was not one of them, but Vicasa had finally accepted one of my applications for Karma Yogi program in November. So I knew that I wanted to get to Thailand before November because I wanted to try to get a job and make a life and just live here. And I knew that
Get settled.
I needed to build around November. I couldn't just show up November and be like, okay, now I want to stay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, I could have, but I was so ready to go. I was ready as soon as everything was done in Florida. I could not wait to get, can I swear?
Go ahead.
I could not wait to get the fuck out. Like I love my community. I loved my students. I love you. I love my family. I loved aspects and parts of Florida, but I for a while I had felt like I didn't it wasn't where I wanted to settle. Um so for a while I wanted to leave, but I couldn't. So then when I could, everything happens for a reason and everything aligns exactly as it should. So I moved to Koh Tao, which is an island an hour and a half from here by boat, and I loved the island. I had my community there as well, and it's a beautiful, very small island. But the studio space, also beautiful, didn't realign with my philosophies and the way it was being run and the management. So I started to again put my feelers out because I was like, I did not move halfway across the world to settle, you know? And I was feeling like, you know, I don't know what the words are for what I was feeling at the time, but I was just like, you know, I can't be dealing with this with like the way that I left and the expectations maybe that there is around this experience, and people are gonna be like, oh, you know, 4 months and then she already gave up. Like, no. I was like, there's a reason why I'm here. So I reached out to Vicasa. I was like, hey, do you guys have a job opening? And they're like, we actually have an immediate opening. And I had to come and audition. And here it's like serious business. It's not like it's a 2 hour class that I had to teach as an audition in their
Wow.
method, which I am not trained in their method. I did the training, but we never actually got to teach their method exactly how it's supposed to be. So yeah, it was pretty nerve-wracking. But then I got the job offer, and I thought about it because I really loved where I was in many other ways. So it was like, that attachment, you know? But and I had my attachments to Florida as well, but like when you feel that call, that intuitive call, that gut feeling in your stomach, like you got to pick up the call. You got to go. So
What would you say is your proudest moment, your proudest accomplishment so far in your life? If you had to pick something, what would you say you're most proud of?
uh I don't know, surviving.
That could very well be one. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I know that was not easy. You posted
I
your
guess,
struggle. So I know it was tough.
yeah, I don't know if I have like an accomplishment that I'm proud of. I mean, I'm proud that that I didn't let everything that's happened to me in my life, because I mean, that's just really just the last, you know, 5 years, but I've dealt with a lot of shit since the moment I was born. And I would say I'm proud of the fact that I didn't let any of that turn me into, you know, a terrible person, that I somehow am still able to love and do what I do. Um, I mean, I know that I messed up and I was arrested 3 times, but I'm glad that I'm not in jail or living on the streets. Like all things that would be totally reasonable for what I've been through. Um, because you know everybody has a backstory,
Oh,
but
yeah.
I'm glad that my backstory, I truly believe that everything I went through was so that I could use my experiences and how I got through them, and how can I help others do the same.
Oh, I miss you.
I'm getting so emotional.
Oh, I am so, so honored to have you just open up like this. But I don't know enough because I didn't walk in your shoes, but I felt it through your videos, through your posts, through our messages. I know you struggled so much. And like I said, for you to be able to show up to class and all hunky dory, everything is great. I'm here for you. What can I help you with when you were like just dying inside? That just says so much about your character. And thank you for making yoga such a beautiful experience for me, to the fact that now, even though you're gone, I can still appreciate and enjoy, because you were one of the first teachers that I went to when I went to Yoga Factory. And you sucked me in. And thanks to experiences like yours, I am this avid hot yogi now that I'm obsessed with it. So thank you for giving me that. Thank you for
My
sharing.
pleasure.
Thank you for giving whoever's watching, the chance to feel connected to you, and hopefully something resonated and they can say, well, shoot, she's been through stuff and she was able to pick herself up and get life going again. Like, it's not over. So you were arrested. Okay, things happen. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Let's learn from it. Let's go to the next thing.
Yeah.
So I think that's very powerful. So thank you so much for sharing that. I appreciate it.
I can say that what's inside of me is inside of all of us. And we just have to tap in, and believe and have faith, and just keep showing up. Doesn't matter how, doesn't matter what it looks like. Some days we go back, some days we go forward. Some days those steps are ugly and staggered and you're crawling, and some days you're running, but as long as you show up every single day, that's all that matters. Um,
1% better every day, right?
yeah, I have my own experiences with depression and suicide, and there are moments that I did not want to be here, and I'm truly grateful that I am.
Me too. Thank you for sharing all of that. And thank you for being up late for us.
Oh, it's fine. I'm always up late, so it's only 9:13, so it's okay.
Thank you so much, Sasha. I really appreciate you. It's
Thank
nice seeing
you.
you again.
Likewise, I
We'll
missed
keep
you
in touch.
guys.
I know.
Yeah.
Miss you too.
I'll give a I'll give a shameless plug right now
Please
to
do.
my business, because
Yes, please
I
do.
gotta I kind of have a business.
And I don't
But
know if I knew this, so please share.
well, I'm starting an online teaching like platform, so I'm gonna start to have like a subscription where like anybody who wants to take my classes can. So it'll be like super affordable, and I'll try to post as many videos as often as I can, not just like hour or 2 hour yoga flow, like, breath work, meditation, a little bit of everything. And then I have my first yoga retreat in Thailand next May, the 11th to the 17th. So if you want more information, let me know.
Where can they reach you? Where can they what's the best, like,
um,
email, Instagram?
Probably Instagram is Sashi Yogini, so SASHIYOGINI. And full warning, my one Instagram page is yoga and personal. So yeah, it's pretty raw, it's pretty real.
I love that. It's very authentic.
Very, very, very authentic. And otherwise, if you don't have Instagram, you can just email me at JARUF, as in Frank, ESA @gmail.com.
Perfect. And I'll put that in the description. That way they can reach out to you. So that is so cool. I'm so happy for you. I think you're going to
Thank
kill it,
you.
especially if it's
Yeah.
anything like your sweat and surrender workshops that you would do down here that were phenomenal. Just
Well, those
fantastic.
were inspired by
By
the
Thailand.
Vikasa method.
Yeah. I
So,
remember you saying that.
yeah. So I'm excited to share with others what the magic of this place, not just Thailand, but Vikasa itself, the magic that is like a retreat experience where you get to just immerse yourself in this practice and not have to like go to work and do those kinds of things, and just be able to just rest and
And
relax in
these
that
retreats
environment.
are any level yoga, can be beginner yoga too.
Oh, yeah. Can be like totally never done yoga, 100%. And I'm going to include some of my favorite teachers here to provide some experiences as well, because I just, like I said, I just want to share like the power that this practice has, and how it's like we said, not just the poses, but it's a lifestyle. And I just want to share with others like what's helped me. Um, so yeah, so that's the intention.
Perfect. Thank you, Sasha. I'm
Thank
excited for you.
you. Thank you.
Well, have a great night. Thank you, everyone, for listening. I hope you found a nugget or two. And I hope, like I said earlier, you can resonate with some of her struggles, because we all struggle. But to see that you can pick yourself up after a traumatic event and not have it define you, then
Yeah,
that's key. So thank you
totally.
for everything. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.